Orange Township Board of Zoning Appeals meeting of August 15th, 2024 to order.
I'll call roll. Ms. Ross?
Here.
Ms. Neff?
Here.
Mr. Wellington?
Here.
And Mr. Pax?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do I need to
I
swear anyone since we...
I don't see a soul in the building,
Okay,
but
well-
I do still raise my right hand, so you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll do that. Anyone who intends to testify, please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
Thank you.
All right, so we have, you see on the agenda, one item of new business and then a work session that will follow. So for the item of new business, some fairly updated news that they are looking to continue the case to next month. So this comes through having received word that they have some revisions that they are deciding on moving forward with, given they have talked to, the applicant has talked to their neighbors, and the neighbor stated some feedback that prompted them to go that direction. So I am going to have you all, if you'd like to discuss it, consider making a motion for continuing the application to September. That's what I would say is generally before you and for your discussion.
Okay, do we need to have the specific date, or can we just say to the September meeting?
Yeah, I have that as September 19th. So I would say you can state that exact date in your motion.
Is there any discussion? Okay, I move to continue variance application VA-24-26 for Kristen Lowry to the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting on September 19th, 2024.
Second.
Motion to continue the application to the September 19th BZA meeting for case VA 24-26. Motion made by Ms. Ross, seconded by Mr. Pax. Those voting, Ms. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Pax,
Yes.
Ms. Neff,
Yes.
and Mr. Wellington.
Yes.
And that motion passes. So now we have the business items behind us, and we switch gears all of a sudden to a work session. And I do want to first of all thank the BZA for being interested and wanting to be involved in the code rewrite process. I'm thinking most or all of you are aware that this has been going on for a couple years now. It started January 2022, and there have been multiple iterations of the draft code that's gone back and forth with a consultant who has diligently worked to make changes where needed. Open houses were held through the last couple of years, in fact, each year, so 2022, 23, and as recently as earlier this year. And feedback was garnered at, I know those meetings incorporated further into the draft code. So for where we're at today, kind of a status update, this initial feedback has brought us to a draft form that's more or less final with some lingering tweaks here left to make. So we're basically considering this to be a finished product where it's at right now. The draft code has been and continues to be available through our website for viewing on the zoning page. So if you haven't been there, I would definitely recommend you go through and do that. Next steps. We're coming up on it becoming kind of a faster pace in officially the adoption step of the process. We're looking for that to actually begin next month. So things are picking up speed, and I think your interest and enthusiasm is coming at a good time. So the next month in September, there will be a review by the Delaware Regional Planning Commission, Zoning Commission, and then finally the code rewrite will go into the Board of Trustees for their consideration for adoption. And overall, this would be a several-month process. So I would say the aim is to have this take effect in about Q4 of this year. So a few months, certainly, before the end of the year. To take you through some of the changes on the new code versus what we have now. This is high level, but I wanted to give you at least the nuts and bolts of it. The general flexibility for creating more flexibility for business owners and residents as they're improving and enhancing their property. Doing design standards for commercial buildings and specifically architectural standards, which we do not have right now. Increasing things with landscape areas and buffer zones between commercial, industrial, as well as the residential properties. We have some of that, but enhancing that text. Also, these things are not all too relevant to our daily lives here in BZA, but just for your awareness, parking lot designs are going to look a little bit different. More text associated with the walkways for pedestrians, islands, landscaping in the parking areas, around the parking areas, and then shared parking, more text along those lines. Other changes are going to include requirements associated with sidewalks and multi-use paths. Other things with more, I guess, affecting you all here would be on the conditional use side of things. There is new language in the code to basically bring forward more conditional use requests to you all, and that would involve the major or minor home occupations, defining those a bit differently to bring those requests here, so just directly kind of affecting the types of cases that would be coming here to the BZA.
Here versus the other zoning board?
Well, just changing the definitions. I think it depends on the type of request that we're talking about, but changing the definitions such that if you have a certain type of business venture, that it would need to come before the Board of Zoning Appeals for consideration, before it can be approved.
Maybe something that perhaps wasn't defined in the current code.
Correct.
And so it
Yeah.
kind of gives them more clarity on that.
More clarity
Gives you
in
better
authorization.
enforcement, hopefully.
Enforcement would be the piece of that puzzle, correct? So if we have some time at the end, and if you're curious, we could try and go into that specific section on home occupations, try to pull that up in the code if we're able to navigate to it, but we'll do our best with that. So I'm just going to keep going through a couple more things, and another item being
Eric,
signage.
One quick thing, do we need this portion to be recorded, or I wasn't sure how is it working?
Oh, as far as the recording goes,
Yes.
if there are any pieces of the meeting that the reporter hasn't gotten, we'll be able to use what we've recorded and share that with her later on. So we should be in good shape, no problem.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if this was as part of this discussion.
I think it has to be because we're meeting together.
Correct.
Okay,
Enough
that's
of
the
us.
key on that?
Yeah.
We're all recorded from the beginning of the meeting till now, so
Okay.
we'll have that.
That's
Yep.
fair, just was confirming. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. I was transitioning to some signage discussion. That is a big piece that's undergoing changes, and kind of the opposite of the conditional uses, where you're going to see some more conditional use type requests. You're going to likely see fewer in terms of the signage requests. One item happens to be the maximum height for wall signs that you're so accustomed to dealing with, seeing here, being taken out entirely from the code in favor of there being a focus on the maximum area for signage instead. So you will not have that maximum height, the 15-foot that we are so used to here in the new code.
So is that something that's would be part of the zoning process approval, or would be staff approval?
It would mean it would be administrative, because there would be no there would be no non-compliance issue that needs to be addressed. So that is going to be a change that's notable. Some things, though, with other signs, electronic message type signs, currently they're prohibited, but we're looking, and we can also look at that if you're interested. They're going to have an allowance, there is going to be an allowance in our new code for the electronic type signs with requirements associated with that. So, pole signs, the types of signs that don't have a base, they will remain prohibited, so there's no change with those. Temporary commercial type signs, they will be permitted, but they'll continue to have limitations like they do today with the 6-month duration for those permits. So I think that covers some of the higher level items. I mentioned for signage, the pole type signs staying the same. Some other things that are staying the same involve the processes for both the rezonings as well as for appeals requests. They'll have to follow the same steps to go forward and request those from both boards. Some other things that are remaining the same, generally speaking, all of the planned district texts are going to remain in effect. So wherever you have planned district development plans with those original texts, those will still be enforced and those are not being taken away or modified. The nonconformity piece, that's going to stay the same, where people in the layman's terms use grandfathering in. Nothing's changing with nonconforming uses. Those are allowed to continue. And then we will do our enforcement in about the same process. And Philip is our code compliance officer. I think you've all met him, but he and the others in the zoning department will work on enforcement in the same method that we've done so far. And I have here the lighting in general is not changing from what we're familiar with you know, light trespass and intensity and things of that nature. So that rounds it out for what I have here. And I wanted to certainly open up the floor to you all with anything that you're interested in delving into further and general questions you might have on the draft code. So.
Could we please take a look at some of the home conditional use that you mentioned earlier? I think that would be helpful for me.
If you give me a moment to try and get to the page that's most relevant.
Or if there are any specific sections you would suggest we kind of read up on that we might be seeing more cases from.
Sure.
So I can be prepared.
Well, I can state, so let me look at one example. If you can potentially get to page 86. I didn't really touch on it, but this also is worth mentioning about the Lewis Center Village area. 86 has some, and I should back up a little bit. All of the sections have new tables for kind of cleaner, easier understanding, starting with the use tables. If you see here, the icon designating what type of use each item is defined as. So you have your permitted, which is the solid circle, and then the conditional, which is the hollow circle, if you will. And all of these districts have this for reference. So I wanted to make sure that you know what you're looking at when you get to each section with this these use tables.
Cool.
Yeah, and overall the code will look different. A lot of that is just the graphics and the formatting, but I can say there is more in terms of visual aid that we have been inputting in this new code.
So you have Lewis Center Village. What
Right.
other breakout? Or, oh, is that because it's except that it has its own table? Or is there like one table for everything that's not Lewis Center
Oh,
Village?
that's a good question. You should be able to go to, let me go up here. we sort of have a master table that shows every zone, and that's,
So Lewis Center Village is its own zoning area, or for lack of a better,
correct.
okay.
That's correct,
That's right.
if I didn't answer that. There is still some more discussion to be had on that part. I think we're in the middle here of kind of determining some changes in the Lewis Center Village Code. So stay tuned for a little bit more and a little more confirmation than what I currently have for you, but that is being looked at. The overall table, the master table that I was referring to is in section 5. If you can go to 64, about 20 pages. So if you want to take a glance at all uses all together, this is really handy. You can see what now is conditional use versus permitted. If it doesn't have one of the two circular icons, then it's not applicable. Mhm.
Eric, quick question for you.
Yep.
How does the township categorize or differentiate advanced manufacturing versus light industrial versus logistics?
That's a good technical question.
Or in real estate?
Historically, with manufacturing, if it's a lighter manufacturing, it's product that's already been created that is more of like an assembly kind of a step. So there wouldn't be the same kind of production of any smoke and things that would be associated with the creation of the materials themselves.
Sure.
So assembly is going to be a general kind of a term for the light industry. And the uses for that. Advanced manufacturing, that would probably put it in a more modern kind of a category. I would have to get back to you, though, on exactly how that might be compared with just, in my view, more generalized light industrial. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it has any effect with power consumption as well.
Yeah, that'd be another thing worth checking into. So, yeah, happy to give you some feedback on that. Have to look into it a little bit further, though.
And are these defined within the code?
We do have more definitions.
Okay.
I'm not sure if each and every one of these has a lengthy, detailed definition. Let me go to, there should be a, similar to what we had in our current code, a section that I can refer to you for all the definitions. Just one moment. Okay, yep. So it even looks a lot like our current definitions, alphabetically arranged. And then I do have a definition, if you'd like me to read, for advanced manufacturing in the code.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Innovative technologies is referred to, but again, I'll look for more information and can send that later to you. Yep.
Is short-term rental homes or businesses?
I've been
Short-term rental?
short-term rental. I've been looking at the rentals as residential type rentals,
Okay.
not business.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
So that would be somebody who just rents out their house on a
Mhm.
long, I guess I don't know what short-term means. I'm thinking, what they call for,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Airbnb?
yeah, Airbnbs.
Airbnbs.
Yeah, I'd have to look up that definition in the new code, but
I know that's
it's-
been something that hasn't been in anyone's code for a long time, and so I was just I'm interested in seeing
Well, yeah, and
how they're addressing that, because I'm not sure the state addresses it too much.
I've heard it comes up a lot in people trying to rent their places for Airbnb and
Yeah.
their neighbors not liking it. I've heard that's like becoming increasingly
I know at the state legislature level that had been discussed, and I don't know the status as it turned out today. I think that had kind of been tabled for a while,
Okay.
but the discussion had involved whether that would be a zoning exempt item altogether.
Oh,
So it's something that
okay, so
you
that
can
would
look into.
override this.
essentially could, but I don't know the status of that as it
Okay.
stands and how that transpired. I apologize.
Okay. It's a lot of moving parts.
It is. I know there is a Airbnb in close proximity to my home that they actually added on a building that has rooms in it.
Oh,
It is not, it is essentially like a motel, but it doesn't have to meet any of that criteria, and it's a very gray area of zoning that I'm hoping they can thresh out on a state level.
Mhm.
It would help all of you if they would
yeah,
address that.
Yeah,
Because it isn't required to have any of the safety sprinklers and things like that.
And
that are-
the
Mhm.
one, even kind of the checks and balances on the
Right.
smoke detectors and things.
Yeah, it's different.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is a living space that is made available to rent for a period ranging from as short as a single day to up to 30 days, regardless of the amenities, whether the amenities are provided. And it does exclude the bed and breakfast, boutique hotel, and hotel and motel. It's outside of those as we're defining it.
I like these tables.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, they're replicated in each section for that specific district. You'll see a lot of them.
It looks like it'd make it a lot easier for you.
Yeah, and we certainly hope for folks who don't come into the code, dig into the code, but seldomly or if it's their very first time, that it's user-friendly and not as imposing, and some splashes of colors here and there that we figure can certainly help out. I think we can go back to that home occupation question. So, page 51 of the document, we can look at that definition. And I'll just start reading as Philip moves back to that. So for home occupations, the intent of the section is to permit certain commercial activities at a limited scale within residential dwellings or on residentially used properties that have no or minimal adverse impacts on surrounding residential uses. So that's the introduction to your home occupations. Page 51, but 74 of the document. Sorry, it's making it confusing.
Must be quite the intro to this. 20 pages.
We might skip down to the classification type, and that would start on page 75 of the document. So for the minor, there's defined several definitions that I believe that would be the five for minor home occupation. And then two more from going to the next page, you would have the major home occupations. You see those are defined. Major is what you're pretty accustomed to by now.
But we'll review the minor as well now.
So that, let's go back here. To my understanding, the minor kind kind of pulls it out from a board review, and that, as I've been looking at it, the minor, so your sales offices, as long as they meet the criteria of the minor home occupation. I might have to get back to you on that. Let's see. Actually, section C, for minor home occupations, these are businesses that have no or very limited in-person customer client traffic. So they would be required to have an approved zoning permit. That's number one. And then the staffing, these must be only individuals who maintain that subject property as their primary residence. So as I just wanted to confirm I wasn't speaking off base, that it is distinguished from the major home occupations, such that this would be a staff review, administrative review for minor home occupations, and then what you all are accustomed to for the major home occupations, those would come before you for the board's consideration, which is, again, what you've seen many times.
So under minor,
Mhm.
all of the persons who are employees have to live in that home.
Correct. Yep. If they're in-person employees, staffed in person, only the individuals who maintain the subject property as their resident. These must be people who maintain that residence as the property as their primary residence.
You know why I'm asking.
Yep.
Is there anything that helps your enforcement? Because your hands are tied as things are now. Is there anything in the code that helps you
That's a good question,
to
yeah.
investigate and enforce? Because I know there are circumstances where it happens, but the level of information you have to receive in order to be able to go and investigate is so high that they're allowed to actually be in noncompliance right in front of you, and there's nothing you can do. And I believe the code ought to be able to help you with that.
I appreciate
So
the feedback. Yeah.
I believe that if you're going to set up a code, you ought to be able to enforce it. And if your staff's hands are tied, then may as well not even have that part of the code.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's something that we'll look more at, the enforcement piece on situations involving
And I know
minor.
it's really hard legally, but
Mhm.
I want to protect the township and protect you as well.
Great.
It makes it more straightforward for residents as well. Like, am I across the line on this use?
Yeah, where is that line drawn as well? That's great.
I think of like the daycare, or some of the cases that have come across. As we were looking at this, that's what I was trying to see. Like, okay, how would that fall, or how might that differ?
Was that listed in there?
I think daycare is
It's
on
the last one on the
second.
major.
Okay.
There it is,
I
yeah.
missed that.
So we reviewed it similarly, I think, as we did.
I think the prohibited is also maybe incorrect, but I want to say that the prohibited is a new mention to state that automobile service type repair places, use storage for ammunition, materials, or the manufacture of those, all of that would not be allowed. That would be all prohibited, is a better way to say it. So that is on that table.
By making it so specific, does it tie your hands? If somebody is you can't possibly list every type of use, but by
So what if
making
it's
it
not?
very specific, does it make it difficult for you to say, yes,
Well-
you are allowed, or no, you're not?
It's a good question. If you can see the fine print, it's small on the screen. It is also a non-exhaustive list, and so it doesn't constrain us. So given that we do have that at the bottom of the table, I think we've wanted to make sure that we are not boxing ourselves into a select few types of uses.
Then others would come through the board? for
Potentially.
review? Okay.
Again, they would start with that, the first section that I referred to, or the first part of the section where there's a classification of the use as a major or minor. So that would take place for anyone who comes through and has that request. Mhm.
That seems a lot clearer and more helpful.
Make sure I didn't miss anything from my first set of notes.
And you said probably several more months still before it goes before the trustees? for final
Approximately.
approval?
Now, September is the month that things are going to kick into high gear as far as the adoption. So just around the corner.
I'm interested also in, you talked about electronic signage,
Correct.
and I'd like a little more information about signage altogether. And we deal with so many set items within the setbacks, and I wanted to know if anything has changed with that as far as,
Consistency?
yeah. And also, just if anything has changed in property maintenance text.
That's a good one.
We don't, I'll answer the second one first. The property maintenance code, that is not something that we're adding on to, since currently there is not technically a property maintenance code that we enforce. There are select standards as far as condition, grass and nuisance type items, of course. Those are in the code as it stands, but not condition of property code. So just to answer that piece, I can move along to looking at the signage section, and I have a page number. I apologize. This would be page 287, and that's where permanent sign standards will begin. I think the electronic messaging will be right after that page. And that would be 287 of the Word document, just to clarify. Okay. Interesting.
Is that what you're looking for?
Permanent signs. Let's see if I can get the permanent signs. .282, general signage standards.
No wonder this has taken 2 years. I can't imagine the amount of detail that you've had to go through.
And thanks for bearing with me in general, too. It would have been the best case if I was here when things got started. I've been learning a lot like you all have. So just trying to give you the best snapshot from what I've gathered. Page, so it's
Signage standards,
general signage.
yeah,
I think we're close.
we're there.
All right. One change, I don't think we had an exemptions for signage prior, but this states there can be some situations where there's a need for emergency type signage, if that's installed by public officials, warning, road hazard, weather condition type things. So that's another layer of detail that we currently don't have. There are some exemption descriptions starting on the, what is that page? We have some Roman numerals that I'm having trouble with. 283. I think we're pretty much close to the, okay. I'll just keep going down here. Okay, so you're very close, 22.06. If you go down to 284, there you go. Yep. So to try and answer, or at least give you a look into what the electronic message center text will read. So, generally speaking, we gave a lot of thought to regulating even things like the time of day that these signs could be displayed for. Locations from residential uses are mentioned with that. Only permanent types of electronic message centers would be allowed. Temporary EMCs would not be permitted. So,
You mean like the ones that you can buy and plug in that are kind of like a neonish? Is that what?
anything that can be easily or readily taken off site.
Okay.
Yeah,
So those are prohibited?
prohibited, correct. And then that paragraph for the design of the EMC, if you can read through that, you may have a question or two. I figured about the graphics portion.
No. What's traveling? Not scrolling, traveling, or flashing. I understand scrolling and flashing.
I understand that to be, instead of the vertical scroll, a travel would be more of a left to right horizontal or right to left.
Do we have to have them within our code? I know there are some items that you almost have to have, or legally, you can be sued. The township could be sued by not, like, as in adult establishments, you have to have them.
To my understanding, this
somewhere,
isn't
but-
something that has a legally must or have to kind of a standard in place. I think this is just another method for regulating signs that people might bring to the township, but while not letting those signs become something that is detrimental to the entire community. So giving them an avenue to have these signs, but it's not, in terms of my understanding, it's not a comparable item to the adult entertainment establishments that you were mentioning.
I'm thinking of the ones that are like at the lotto places that are bright and obnoxious.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Where would they fall under that? Because to me, they seem like the ones you could unplug and take with you. They're small.
Oh, would those happen to be typically in the windows?
Yeah.
That would then become the window regulated signage, which would be a different category. So we would be talking
Okay.
about
Different.
restrictions there for those.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
different.
I guess I've seen a lot of changes in my years in the township, and you think you'll never see it on your street or within your block, and usually do, or at least I have. And living on a very busy street that's a pass through for the county, I can see that there could be a time when there's a gas station up the street from us, and there could be this within a residential area. And if you can just prohibit them legally, seems to me that might be a choice.
Well, feedback noted.
It would never be in somebody's subdivision, but it would certainly be in my subdivision, which is an entire road.
I know this did give some thought
We don't get very
to,
many protections, unfortunately.
yeah,
And it isn't,
Oh, because
it
you're on
isn't
a main road.
because we're on a main road, and it isn't because anyone's doing it intentionally, it's just that we kind of fall in the cracks,
I follow.
because we're not a subdivision.
It does state anything that's within 300 feet of the residential subdivision, but I follow what you're
But it
saying.
would go
Yeah.
until 11 o'clock at night, it could be shining and flipping,
Yeah. No, I follow.
so.
It's late for me.
Well, you know, most kids put their kids
Yeah,
or in
yeah.
bed by 9, but I can just see
Well, no,
that.
that's what I'm saying. There would be a
Yeah.
couple of hours where I'm in bed.
Yeah,
Because
I
I'm
would
still
want to
beyond.
So generally, Ms. Ross, you would be of the feeling that saying that they're outright prohibited as it's
I'm-
currently listed is preferable?
I'm assuming that institutional would be like in front of a school, something like
Correct.
that.
Mhm.
I
Or
would,
the fire department, I think some of the fire departments
yeah,
have
I,
them.
Mhm.
I would be, I would absolutely support them being prohibited, other than institutional.
Other than-
use. Mhm.
Okay.
And regulate institutional use, so that, I think that movement and brightness and all those things should be regulated where they are. But I really don't even, that's leading to another question about church zoning. But, you know, I think in front of churches is too much.
Sure.
Unfortunately, go in other areas, other townships, other cities and areas, and you'll always see that one sign or that one business that perks your interest and makes you say, gee, I really don't want that near me. But that leads me to, I'm not very familiar with what type of zoning regulations churches fall within, if they do at all. And I know we've had some conditional uses that are church uses that don't seem to have very many regulations on them. And they fall outside of zoning in some ways. In particular, one that wanted to go into a residential area, and if we approved them as a conditional use, then staff would be the ones telling them what type of building they could build, how high, all of those different things, which takes it out of the realm of the board, the zoning board, zoning commission,
Because it's a church.
because it was a church. And that, I just want to make sure that that can't happen.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that everything that comes into the township undergoes public review.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're getting at is just to make sure that everything is presented from an applicant going through the conditional use process on the front end before you to review, and that review and approval holds the necessary weight, correct?
Yeah, we are not able to, at this level, to be able to make zoning decisions for a development plan, something like that. But they could actually come in and get approval from us to build a church on a piece of property as a conditional use. And they would then not go through the development plan process through zoning, would they?
They might be able to go through the district. So you're talking about potentially farm residential district. Like we've seen in the past, there's a request made to get conditional use approval for that in the farm residential district. And they would still need to meet the development standards for that district,
But there
or
would-
they would be requesting variance.
But would they have a public meeting as in a zoning commission meeting, where people could come in and see the height of the building, where the lights would shine, where parking would be facing, where lights might shine into their house next door, things like that that are taken out of the public purview when it's done in the process that we have.
Something that I might have to take offline with you to kind of go drill down into some more
Yeah.
detail, because
Yeah.
I haven't
I guess what I.
have a comparable example.
We looked, at one time, we had an applicant that came before us who wanted to put a church building on a farm residential property
Yeah.
without a zoning change. Instead of taking it and doing a zoning change and then going through zoning commission to build the building and to have them approve the development plan, which I believe is the proper process.
I see.
They were gonna come through the Board of Zoning Appeals, get permission from us for a temporary occupancy. Wasn't that correct, temporary? Which,
I don't have the case history,
Yeah, I don't-
were
unfortunately.
you here then?
I don't, I wouldn't have gone back that far. That might have been
The one on Bale
my
Canyon.
predecessor.
The one on Bale
Yeah, I
Canyon?
think that was
But,
Just
but what would
predates
happen
me.
was that they came to us, we would approve it, and then it would go back to staff, and staff would approve the development plan. It never would go to the zoning commission. So there was no transparency to the public about what was actually going to be built on that site. But if we approved it, it was a done deal. And I felt as though
So some development controls at the level of the conditional use.
I believe that the zoning, every
that-
development ought to go through the zoning commission. Absolutely, because of transparency and open information to the public.
Sure.
And to gain public input. And then I also, oh dear, there was one other part of that I really do believe that something like that, where a building is going to be built, and it's not just using a building that's already there, takes it out of the Board of Zoning Appeal purview and places it in a zoning change and before the zoning commission.
Yeah, well, I can certainly kind of circle back around, like I said, drill
I
into some
just-
greater detail on
It's
that.
something that
for-
really,
Because
with
we will
gov-
always.
it is a
Yeah.
loophole, and with
Yeah.
government needing to be so transparent on everything
Mhm.
in all ways, that is a way that people can look at the township and think that we're doing something that isn't legitimate, and that wouldn't be our intention at all.
Sure.
It would
Right.
just be a loophole, you're correct, in the code, and I want to make sure that to me is very important, because it puts a lot of onus on us to make a decision based on our criteria that could end up having a 3-story building put there in the backyard of people who have no say in it.
Yeah, and definitely here, the development plan or zoning commission review process is important.
It is, it's
For
very
you,
important, and I trust them.
Mhm.
And I think the people of the township trust them.
Yep, and we'll be happy to follow up with some more clarity, and then how it how things would fall into place when it comes to our straight districts. We'll always have certain straight districts like we do today with the farm residential, where we do have these types of requests come through. So kind of I'll take your feedback into account and maybe have a little bit more lengthy discussion on that. Yep.
I know when I was at one of the public, and I don't mean to, I don't want to be the only one talking. At one of the public meetings, there was talk about changing, I think it might have been farm residential, to make it easier for property owners to put businesses in. Robin and I talked about it.
Mhm.
I was, you know how I feel about home occupancy, and so I was very not favorable towards that, but I just wondered if that was something that had been, I think it was people who had small, 2, 3, 10 acre, up to 10 acre home sites.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't privy to that discussion. I
Okay.
wish I could chime in right now. But
Is a pole sign a billboard?
pole sign, well, they would be prohibited across the board. So if you're talking about the 2 posts, they're going to continue to be prohibited.
Okay.
Um,
But billboards are prohibited at this time, right? Like the ones, I know in the past they've wanted to put them along the railroad tracks, big, tall billboards.
It's my understanding,
And I think they were prohibited and they thought about coming to BZA.
I'm going to double check and see if there's potentially a mention of the billboards
Okay.
regulations, so we can take a look. It's 22.08.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
Just
I
makes
mean,
me think.
It's interesting with the billboards, they should just pull down the signage. That's the distinction.
Mhm. I know some businesses want to put them in along the railroad tracks on the railroad property. It's like, no, let's not do that.
Okay.
Route 23. And then moved to Southwold State, so I moved from one freeway to another. But it's,
23 is definitely getting bigger than that.
it always makes you think about it. We had billboards. Not on our property, but there were billboards along 23 when I was growing up.
Maybe if you're able to jump to that section. It's stating non-conforming signs or billboards. To my knowledge, we're not adding any kind of new provision to suddenly allow for billboards. So the freestanding signage should look consistent to what it does today. I wish I could grab that section just to read you the language, but you're welcome again to look at that later on. 22.
And I don't know what they're called, the flag signs that are tall with a plastic post and then have just a thin. car
Temporary
lots-
type sign?
Car lots have them out and,
Feathers.
is that what they're called?
That's what
That's what
we
you
have
guys
been
call 'em?
referring, yeah.
Are those permitted?
There wouldn't be a change to allow for these temporary signs when they're currently not allowed, so they would continue to be prohibited. If they're the type I'm thinking of, thinking that you're describing, they're put up for like eye-catching, grabbing your attention, and none of those signs, unless they're part of a display for a 15-day period associated with the grand opening, is allowed. So outside of
I'm
that,
gonna ask about State Route 23 right now, because there's some up there right now. It's a grand opening.
Yeah, that's the temporary.
and then after 15 days, they must be removed.
I have one more and then I promise I'll leave you all alone.
We all wanted to do this, that's okay.
When a commercial building is built, and that can be lots of different kinds of buildings, is there anything in the code that takes into consideration tree replacement? So that, or even in a, I guess even in a subdivision, although I don't know that we're gonna be adding any, that I know in my previous workplace, they would go onto a site and they would say there are this many caliper inches of trees approximately on this site. And you can, your development has to incorporate a percentage of that so that they can't just come in and
Cut down.
accidentally cut down all the trees
Yeah.
and then not replace them with caliper inches. So has that been considered at all?
Through the landscaping standard enhancement, I'm inclined to tell you yes, but I don't have the exact codes that are stipulating that that specifically that trees be replaced when taken out. So you are familiar with the Route 23 corridor overlay district, and a lot of those landscaping standards that you're finding in that district will be applicable in the district, in the planned commercial and office districts, so that there is enhanced landscaping compared to almost hardly any mention of it as it is today. So the landscaping is going to be looked at in more detail, but as for your question, I'd have to look into that to note if there is actually text stating that specifically that trees must be replaced when removed. Yeah.
I know they didn't say that you had to exactly replace tree for tree,
Yeah.
but it was that on the site, you had to have a percentage of the caliper inches that were removed. That way
Over
you
the
didn't go in and
caliper.
just take everything out and not put something back.
Right.
And you said something about parking lots, that there would be landscaping criteria in there.
Islands.
Does it keep it low? Because I know that's really a problem in some of the shopping areas along 23, that they put in nice landscaping, and within a couple years, it's so high you can't see over it.
I see what you mean.
To get, and
Yeah.
and it puts you guys in a bad, you really don't have time to go out to see, to make sure that their grasses are, you can see past them, not get
Yeah.
hit by a car.
Yeah, no, landscaping, screening, and potentially creating some hazardous conditions because they grow up and they do very well and are not properly trimmed back, so forth.
Right.
Yep. Currently, the standards for maintaining the landscape are really constrained again to that RCOD district. So even with that, the standards are more or less just that these plantings must be maintained in the same location that they were approved, not so much about bushes grow so high and so far apart. So it's something that, yeah, I can certainly jot down as a concern and of interest to you all.
And has anything changed are we still going to see as many setback issues? I mean, there are not, with Orange Township's growth in the past 20 years, there's not a whole lot left subdivision-wise for single-family dwellings. So, I'm sure that you could make changes there, but that really wouldn't affect us so much, is that the houses are pushed back so far in the lots. They have to have setbacks if they want to have anything in their backyard at all.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know whether there was anything could be done to help the residents or to make it more consistent for us. And it could be that's not possible, I don't know.
Well, I think because
They're
we're
already
built
there.
out, there are
They're
a lot of
in place
existing subdivisions. I mentioned at the onset, but to confirm, the standards that are in place for these subdivisions as it stands today will continue to remain. So we're not doing any modifications for existing subdivisions because of the existing text still being in effect going forward. But if you go through and compare, I think you can readily compare any of the setbacks to what the existing code standards state for our other districts, the non-planned districts. I don't think anything is jumping off the page in terms of significantly reducing particular setbacks compared to what they are today for those non-planned districts. And even if you're looking at our planned commercial code or planned industrial, or let me say, commercial industrial standards, the setback distances for structures oftentimes is dictated by separation requirements, which is looked at by fire department. So things like building additions, those can already be done and be done in a fairly dense manner as a result of not having the minimum setback distances from side and rear property lines.
This is very helpful. Thanks for putting it together for us.
Thanks for bearing with us. Certainly glad to hear from you all, and it's great timing once again that you've decided to speak share your thoughts and questions. So thank you for your honesty. I don't intend for this to be one and done. Ongoing conversation is what I and zoning staff intends to have with you. So as thoughts occur to you, even on the drive home tonight, feel free to get back in touch with me. And I think Robin's mentioned a time or two, but we're even happy to arrange a meeting here in office, at a coffee place, or wherever you have in mind that's convenient for you to drill down into the details of the code. So,
Thank you.
absolutely. If there's no other items of discussion, we are going to hold off on our meeting minutes, and next month we'd likely have three sets of minutes for you to consider for approval. So thanks for your patience on that. It's kind of a function of me getting everything all ready in terms of the revisions.
Awesome.
If you're ready, you can move to adjourn at this point. I don't think we have anything else tonight.
I move to adjourn the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you.